Recording in progress.
Okay, maybe it's good time to start, I guess, at the moment.
All right.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome our participants from Thailand and abroad who are interested in our activities under PSU Open Mobility 2022. And this session actually is the fifth of six to be held in March 2023. And today we have an opportunity to exchange knowledge with our invited speaker on the topic of English medium instruction. But before we get into business, let me introduce you our moderator today. First off, I would like to thank Assistant Professor Faiza Assoc very much for giving us the honor and running this session. Assistant Professor Faiza is currently working as an English lecturer in the English section at Prince of Songkla University, Thailand. Her research interests include English academic writing, second language acquisition, corrective feedback in English writing, writing English as a foreign language, and English language teaching, and English for academic purposes. Now, I think it is an excellent time to officially begin our session. So, would you please join me and welcome Assistant Professor Faiza?
All right. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and welcome all participants from Thailand and overseas to another electrifying section actually as part of our PSU Open Mobility 2022. And thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Yusuf, our project manager, for your lovely introduction. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Faiza, today moderator, and joining me today we have Associate Professor Dr. Nicola Galloway to share her extensive knowledge and great experience on English medium instruction with a focus on impact on ELT. Hi, Dr. Galloway. Welcome back and lovely to see you here again today. Just a little gentle reminder before we get started. As we expect to have top-notch webinar experience, in case if you have a question during the presentation, please type them in the chat box and I will bring them up during the presentation if I can. And we will have the Q&A session at the end, of course. You can either unmute your microphone and ask a question to the speaker directly, or you can post your question in the chat box and the speaker will definitely happily respond to you. And now, without further ado, let's put the spotlight back to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Nicola Galloway. Well, Dr. Nicola Galloway is a senior lecturer, publications lead, the program leads for TESOL at the University of Glasgow. She is an applied linguist with an interest in the pedagogical implications of the use of English as a global lingua franca and the internalization of higher education in non-Anglophone contexts. Interestingly, her work is mainly the growing subfields of global Englishes and today's topic, English medium instruction in higher education. She also has authored and published extensively on these topics, including 7 books, 16 chapters, 4 research reports, and 23 articles. She as well sits on 3 editorial boards of Regional Language Center, Language and Education, and Japanese Association for Language Teaching Journal. And last but not least, Dr. Galloway's forthcoming books include one on the internalization of higher education and a new Rutledge Handbook of Teaching English as an International Language. Now, I think it's time. Let's welcome Dr. Nicola Galloway. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction and reminding me that I need to get writing as well. I'm a little behind with things. Let me just share my screen. Everything okay? You can see it? Okay. So please remember just to interrupt me if something happens with the connection. I haven't usually had a problem. I've closed down browsers and things, but I'm not sure what's maybe my computer's in overdrive a little. So, but please do just let me know. So I've given 2 talks this week on global Englishes, and now I'm going to give 2 talks on the growing global phenomenon of English medium instruction, a very hot topic in applied linguistics at the moment. So this is yet another talk on EMI. We see this at a number of applied linguistics and TESOL conferences now, researchers presenting on this topic. I often get asked why, as a global Englishes researcher, why I also focus on EMI as well. Well, my interest in the globalization of the English language, the global spread of English and the pedagogical implications. So obviously, the spread of English in higher education has numerous pedagogical implications. I also was an ESP practitioner in one of Japan's first EMI universities as well. So I come at this topic as both a researcher in the field of applied linguistics and TESOL, but also as a former curriculum developer in an EMI context as well. So I've been problematizing this context as a teacher myself working in the field. I think that also the growth in EMI is really exponential, and I think that it's going to have a real impact on the field of TESOL as well, and that's what I'm going to focus on in today's talk. But first, before I do talk, I want you to do a little activity here. So I'd like you just to think about your beliefs. Sorry, number 1 is missing here. So we've got a Likert scale graph here, strongly agree on the left, strongly disagree. So the first one, governments are actively promoting EMI policies in higher education in Thailand. Do you strongly agree? Agree? Government policies have led to a rise in EMI provision. The growth of EMI has not resulted in more international students. EMI will improve students, doesn't have to be your students, employability prospects. This one's quite controversial. Students enroll on EMI programs mainly to improve their English proficiency. To learn English, it's important to use only English. So what we see with the movement towards EMI is this English-only ideology again, this belief that the best way to learn English is through English. So we had the movement towards communicative language teaching, full immersion methods, and now EMI. I'll come back to that when I talk about the driving forces. EMI is surging, so rapidly growing in Thailand. Thai English teachers are trained to work on EMI programs. In Thailand, internationalization is synonymous with Englishization. There's no resistance at all to EMI in my context. So if you could take a little photo of this page, I'm actually going to start today's talk with some breakout rooms. So when I open the breakout rooms, this page will disappear. So please do take a photo of it. Okay, I've opened the rooms. I'm just going to give you about just over 5 minutes. We've gone straight into an activity in today's talk.
Ang gusto ko makita yung entry. Nakita daw ang page.
Okay, there's a couple of you that have not joined the room yet. Oh, you're joining now. Maybe you weren't prepared to go in a breakout room so soon.
Yeah, actually, it's a good statement to think about before start the session.
Yusuf, did you get any? I'd be interested to see the feedback surveys at the end of the week, just whether they like these kind
Actually,
of activities.
the survey is I mean, after the participant completed the survey, the my university, Hajai campus, which is the main campus, we were the one who evaluate the evaluation form. So I have I have no right to access those information actually. But if you would like to, I can maybe send email to them and ask a request for the for the outcome of the evaluation form. In that case, I will update you later. Okay.
Yeah, I would be interested, just especially to know about the activities. That would be really good, actually. Yeah, thank you. Oh, someone is unassigned. Yeah, so I'll just get them talking before we start.
สวัสดีครับอาจารย์นันชลีสวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ พี่ไปแล้วไม่มีใครอยู่ในนั้น
เห็นแล้วผมเห็นแล้วในกลุ่มอาจารย์ไม่มีใครเลยไม่เป็นไรอาจารย์ตามมาตรงนี้ก็ได้ครับ
อ๋อโอเคมันมีใครเข้าไปแล้วเขาก็ออกมาเลยอ่ะ sorry ได้
อาจารย์สบายดีนะครับ
สบายดีค่ะ ขอบคุณมากเลยอาจารย์จัดอะไรบ่อยๆได้แบบว่าถ้ามีเวลาก็ได้แวะเข้ามาอะไรเงี้ยถ้าไม่มี
ได้ครับอาจารย์ขอบคุณครับจริงตัวไหนที่อาจารย์ไม่ได้เข้ามาผมมักจะโพสต์ออนไลน์ไว้วิดีโอไว้ครับผมใช่
โอเคค่ะได้ค่ะเดี๋ยวอาจารย์จะงงว่าเราคุยภาษาไทยกันเดี๋ยวโอเคงั้นพี่ปิดก่อนเนาะ
ได้ครับขอบคุณครับ
I think most people are in rooms. There's some people that haven't joined, but
yes yeah
oh, room 10 only has one person because the others didn't.
yeah
I'll move him.
room 9 no one join actually and room 4 as well no one join actually Professor Anjali joined room 4 but because there is no one there so she just left the room yeah
I'll move her to room 1.
yeah
โอเคค่ะ thank you
I think some people are not joining.
I joined room 10 and no one was there, so I left it now.
Okay.
So now you're inviting me to join room 2, okay.
I'm moving people into different rooms.
Maybe after these 4 sessions, if I come across any research fundings, I might contact you, to see the opportunity to collaborate, together.
Definitely. I think that particularly in the area of global Englishes, there's so much work that needs to be done. And
yes,
I enjoyed giving the talk yesterday, actually. Thanks for the opportunity because it got me, I was thinking all day. So as I prepared that talk, thinking about research directions, and it was really helpful to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do, Yusuf. Oh, someone is in room 10 alone.
Yeah, Mr. Short, maybe you can move him to somewhere else.
Yeah. Move them.
Like in my department myself, actually, we also have discussed about EMI as well. Sometimes we would like to to teach our learners by using English as medium of instruction, but because of some specific causes, it's maybe difficult to explain or use English as medium of communication, and we are afraid that if we use English like a 100% English of medium of communication or instruction, the student might demotivate and they may have like a negative perceptions, especially if their English proficiency is low. So maybe EMI is maybe good for those who already their English proficiency is somehow high. But it might not appropriate if the English proficiency is low. So yeah, it's still debatable. I think
And if we think as well about, I mean, all the work in translanguaging pedagogy and the valuable use of the L1 as well. So I think we have this movement in TESOL, but then in EMI, we're almost going backwards to this English-only ideology.
I still remember when I was working here during my first years, 10 of my students, they went to a class and then a lecturer, utilized English, 100% English, and they felt shocked. And then they come to talk to me, and then they said, we would like to withdraw. We would like to move to another program. We feel they feel afraid, it's like culture shock for them because the English proficiency is very low. So maybe doing some kinds of research, divide two groups of students, those who have high English proficiency and those who have low English proficiency, and explore their beliefs, their perception towards EMI in the classroom.
And I think the problem is there's a lot of mixed ability classes in EMI, so the teachers are presented with a lot of challenges. Do you think I should close the breakout rooms or leave them a little
you
longer?
can bring them back, I guess, now.
I hope they like the breakout room activity.
Yeah, I love to. Yeah, it's better than just keep listening. Actually, we have something to do, to share, to discuss.
Well, there's a couple, yeah. I think what I'll have to do is keep moving people around rooms just in case. So if they go to a room and no one else has joined, then I'll keep my eye on that. I'm trying to look at my Wi-Fi signal as I go. I've actually had a problem with the Wi-Fi, so but it seems to be okay so far.
Yeah.
Actually, this is an activity from the MOOC that we've developed in Indonesia. So they're presenting that this week. I was actually asked to give a talk this morning at 6 a.m. in Indonesia, but I thought it's too early. That's everybody back now.
Okay.
Okay, sorry if you were in a room alone there. I was having to keep my eye on the breakout room. So I think some people joined the room, others hadn't joined. So I was trying to move you around. I'll keep my eye.
We haven't finished yet. we have discussion. It's go very effectively.
Okay, I'll open the room then. Do you need a little longer?
It's okay.
Do you want longer? You can use the chat to tell me if you need a little longer.
It's okay, but it's a good chance to meet the other people and we share different ideas. Thank you.
We're going to have lots of opportunities. So it's the same rooms. I'll keep those open. And I've got quite a lot of discussion activities. Good. I'm really glad that it was useful for you. Well, before I started, I just wanted you to think about the Thai context as well, or a context that you're familiar with, because context is really key. Not only is EMI discipline specific, but it's also context specific as well. And I think it's important to think about these things as well, about the government policies, the driving forces behind this trend in Thailand, as well as some of the key perceived benefits, such as employability, English proficiency improvement as well. So we'll problematize all of these in today's lecture, and you'll have a chance to discuss more. So EMI then is not only a growing global phenomenon, but it's also a growing field of research within applied linguistics. We now have full books on the topic, a number of funded research studies. I've just put a couple of my own here from the British Council. The first one was in Japan and China, the second was Thailand and Vietnam, and the one that I've just completed is in Indonesia. And also, if we look at the British Council Future of English, they have recently put £1 million into funding a series of projects to explore the future of English. I don't know if you are familiar with the 2006 David Graddle publication, English Next. It was a really good report where he theorized about the future of English, and he had his pyramid of English and different languages. Well, the Future of English planned to fund a series of projects looking at the future of English, and I was really quite surprised when I recently looked at their website to see how many of these projects actually focus on EMI. Oh, I obviously spoke too long there. Let's move to the next slide. How many of these focused on EMI? So I think that really tells us something as well about this growing global phenomenon. We also have emerging research networks, so the EMI Oxford Research Group, which I partner with, and the newly established ELINET, English Education, Languages and Internationalization Network, that I presented at the end of my 2 talks this week, and I'll give you a little more detail at the end of the talk today. So we see growing communities within the field focusing on EMI. The growth of EMI was originally in Europe. We saw in just 13 years, this is incredible, a 1,115% growth in just 13 years. In these contexts, English proficiency was deemed high enough and therefore minimal, if any, language support was provided on these EMI programs. So the context is really quite different to more emerging or surging EMI contexts. The key driving force was more student and staff mobility in Europe. However, in recent years, we see that English EMI has moved beyond the traditional hotspots of Northern Europe, and we have what we've called surging EMI contexts. So if we look here at Thailand, for example, the 2 15-year plans, in 1984, there were just 14 programs. This rose to 520. This shouldn't be timed. I'm not sure what's happened here. Rising to 520 in 2003 and then 981. So we saw quite significant growth rates here. Between 2004 and 2008, another figure is here that the programs almost doubled. And the Office of Higher Education Commission in 2017 and 18 reported that there was 769, as we know they're named, international programs overall. And this attracted a lot of international students in the Thai context as well. So growth rates are really quite significant. I think when we're discussing the growth of EMI, though, it's very important to note that EMI adoption is not linear and not without dispute. So it's implemented, when I mean not linear, it's implemented in very different ways in different contexts. And quite often it's been rejected as well. Some countries have reverted back to their national languages. We know in Indonesia, in primary schools, for example, excuse me, there was a revert back to Bahasa. We've got efforts to decolonize the curriculum as well. There's a lot of resistance to EMI, and I'll talk about some of the challenges as well and give you an opportunity to problematize this in your own context, particularly with regards to the westernization of higher education. This idea that to internationalize is synonymous with Englishizing as well. So there's a number of driving forces behind EMI around the world. It's often predicted to enhance staff and student recruitment. This is particularly important in contexts such as Japan, for example, with dwindling domestic populations. There's a need for income generation to attract international students. How do you attract international students? You offer programs in English. There is an assumption that, again, internationalization means to Englishization. So EMI can have a positive influence on institutional income, so student fees, profiles, rankings. In the Chinese context, for example, rankings are determined on how many EMI courses are offered. So here we see the role of English in the rankings of universities in non-Anglophone contexts. It's perceived to improve staff and student employability. I think this is questionable, however, because very minimal research has been done on the employability of EMI graduates. And this brings me back to a conversation I had at, I think, Mahidol University with students studying Thai food science. They spoke to me about their concerns, that they were very, very concerned that all of their materials were American textbooks. So they knew a lot about American food science technology, pasta, bread, but they were very concerned about their ability to work in Thailand after graduation. So they were actually auditing the Thai medium food science courses. So I think we do need to look into this in more detail. There's also an assumption that English, or well, EMI provides access to a wider range of materials, cutting edge knowledge. As we know, English takes the lion's share of academic outputs. Our academics are encouraged to publish in English. It can enhance staff and student mobility. And I think the main key factor here in surging contexts such as Thailand is this perceived link to improve English language competencies. There is this assumption that transitioning to teach entire degree programs through the medium of English will magically improve students' English language competency. And I'll come back to that. So as Rose et al. Pointed out here, a widely purported benefit of EMI is that it kills two birds with one stone, and students magically, simultaneously acquire both English and content knowledge. English then is like a magical Aladdin's lamp that's going to give students knowledge of their subject matter and magically improve their English, despite often receiving minimal or any language support on these programs, which is really quite problematic and is something I'll explore today. These perceived benefits in relation to English are at the individual level, the institutional level, but also the national level as well. EMI is closely linked in these new contexts to the modernisation agenda of the nation. This desire to improve the English language competencies of the country's citizens. I've obviously got a timer on the animation here. I don't know what's happened. So if we look then at the internationalisation of higher education in Southeast Asia, as I mentioned then, there's links to goals to develop English proficiency, but it has been criticised across ASEAN for being implemented in a very top-down manner. EMI research we've got a growing body of research research has not caught up with the implementation of EMI policy, but it is growing, as I demonstrated at the start of the talk. And the research highlights a number of challenges, and quality assurance is a real core concern. And I'm going to focus on that in tomorrow's lecture. When I look at researching EMI, I've decided to take a different slant with tomorrow's lecture and focus on curriculum evaluation as a way to drive research. EMI raises issues of equity and access to higher education. I really noticed this in the Thai context as well. This was very much in the students' mindsets. They were aware, the EMI students were aware that they were advantaged in society and that this may exacerbate divisions within society. And what we see as well in Southeast Asia is calls for more research with core stakeholders. And I'll come back to that and also tomorrow. So what is EMI then? Well, I'm not sure everybody really knows what EMI is. And I think that, well, I don't just think, that the research also shows that conceptualizations and interpretations of EMI vary. So what I've put here is the language and content continuum. We've got English language teaching, obviously that the goals are language. So we've got ELT to the left. We've got CBLT, content-based language teaching, or CBI, content-based instruction, where this is very much a language course. The goal is English improvement, but you may teach a lesson on geography or the environment. We have CLIL and ICLH. So CLIL, content, language and integrated learning, and ICLHE, integrated in content, language in higher education. So CLIL in a university context, where we have a dual focus. There's a dual goal of teaching language and content. And then we have EMI. Is that positioned solely to teach the content, but the medium is English? The medium of instruction, sorry, is English. Another difference between EMI and CLIL is that CLIL emerged in high school contexts in consultation with language learning experts because of this dual focus. EMI has not. EMI has emerged as a top-down policy that's been implemented with little consultation with language experts. And that's something that I'm going to focus on today. So that's a key difference here between CLIL and the emergence of EMI. We also see that a number of factors influence EMI implementation. So at the bottom here, I've put a reference to Jim McKinley's study. He found that in one university in Japan, 3 different EMI programs saw the purpose, the goals of EMI. They placed their EMI program at different points, different places on this language continuum, language content continuum. One was more of a CLIL approach. One was more of a one-to-one, and the other one was solely focused on content. So what we see is that different instructors, different stakeholders, students and lecturers see the purpose of EMI, the goals of the curriculum, as very different as well. And I'll come back to that. In addition to differing understandings of what EMI is and what the goals of the programme are, there's a number of different factors that influence this. Students' English, their previous education, their transition, the entry requirements, whether support is provided, whether it's full, partial or bilingual EMI, and obviously the driving factors as well. So the point I want to make here is that it's really important to think about the context, and that EMI is not this one thing, this one uniform policy that's implemented in the same way in different contexts. So we're going to go back to your breakout rooms then. So based on what I've presented so far, think about an EMI program that you're familiar with. You may work on one, or you may have studied on one, you may teach on one. EMI is often related to English proficiency goals, but not for everyone. Where would you place an EMI program that you're familiar with on this continuum? So think about the goals of the program and also the key learning outcomes. So think about where you would place it first. Then I want you, secondly, to think about different stakeholders. Where would the EMI content lecturers place the program? What about the students, the Ministry of Education, or the program managers, or any other stakeholders you can think of? So if you take a picture of this again, and I've opened the rooms, and the internet connection seems fine. Oh, some people are unassigned. I don't know why that happens sometimes. Let's sign them now. Oh.
Maybe you can move Faiza from room 1 to somewhere else. She is the only
Okay.
one in the room 1.
I'll move people to room 1 now.
Okay, good. Yeah.
It is strange that
So-
it's automatic, but I don't know why. Maybe people have just not joined yet.
Yeah. Okay, there is only one person in room 4.
I'll move more now. Thanks, Yusuf. This is helpful. Thanks for helping.
Yes, sure. Okay. Room 8, 7, room 6, 5 is fine. Room 4, now 2 people. Okay. Yeah, it seems fine now, I guess.
Okay. They're uneven, but it doesn't matter as long as people are in. Oh, that's
Yes.
good. I don't think we have as many people today.
Yes.
I hope that's not an indication of earlier in the week. Oh no.
It's good that you have introduced the alienate, at the end of the every session, because after that I will post all videos, online, yeah, and I will share to many different platforms.
Also, the video gets shared.
Yes, I will share all videos. Yeah, 4 sessions. Yeah.
I should have put lipstick on.
Yeah.
Oh, I can hear someone.
No, just my office, my my colleagues, he's in my office too. So he is in, one of the break rooms and discuss,
I'm just thinking in the video, me and you have been chatting at times, so you should maybe watch the video. We've been chatting during the breakout rooms. Okay for time?
Yeah. And please,
Yeah.
please not forget to send me your PowerPoint presentations, okay? For the
Yeah.
first and second day. Maybe,
I was
maybe,
thinking of,
maybe you
sorry.
can send me later after you finish all the 4 sections.
I'll do that, yes. Yeah, it's just been as soon as I finished, it's been quite a busy week because we're launching Alienate as well. But I'll put them all together as a PDF and then I'll send them to you.
Yes, sure.
They're too big to send. I tried to send one yesterday as an attachment, but it got rejected. So I think I need to save as a PDF.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got some people that are not in a group. Move. Moving people around. Nice opportunity for people to meet each other as well.
Yes, definitely agree. They then can discuss to one another based on their own context. Maybe it can make, more a bit, interesting if you ask, some representative to summarize, what they have discussed, from their groups. Yeah. Maybe
That's
no
a
need,
very
maybe,
good idea.
no need in every group, but maybe some 1 or 2 people, anyone who want to share, what they have discussed from the group.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it seems there are still some people in the main room, I guess.
Really? Everyone should have an invitation to. I think they've just not joined.
Today it seems times fly, 45 minutes already.
I know. Do you think we should close the room now?
And I think it should be okay now. Yeah, bring them back. Yeah, I guess.
I know 45 minutes already. They've had 2 discussions.
It seems they are very happy with discussion.
Yeah, I realised that today. That's why I've given a little longer. That's good.
Trans-languaging and the EMI, is very limited in Thailand, actually. There are still lots of rooms, to conduct the research.
Well, we should definitely talk after the sessions. Yes. Okay, hello everyone. I think that's everyone back now. Would anybody like to volunteer to summarize the discussion or some key points from your group?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Assistant Professor Shamaifan, she might have something to say.
Muhammad.
Assistant Professor Muhammad, would you like to say something from your group discussion?
Muhammad.
Actually, in the discussion we had we were like from Philippines and from Thailand, like 2 different contexts, like second language and foreign language. So for our foreign language, I think that it is impossible to continue with EMI all the time. We need to consider like other approaches like trans-languaging and something. But for ESL context, it may be like EMI, it can be. But for the context of Thailand, I don't think so that in some universities it may, but in this university it's difficult to continue with EMI.
And again, it makes us think about, think about the E in EMI as well. And within, the field of TESOL, we have research on global Englishes, translanguaging. So we know that the valuable use of the student's mother tongue as a pedagogical tool as well. And that speakers do draw on their entire linguistic repertoires when they're learning, when they're communicating. So why in the EMI context should it be a monolingual approach? So I think we do have to really critically analyze language use in EMI settings and language policy as well as teaching. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, actually, in our breakout group, there's Ajahn Bua Patuma share with us her experience in school. And Ajahn Bua Patuma, if you don't mind, would you like to share it with the speaker I really like to hear your comment on the kind of practice that we are having here in Thailand. Is from what I heard, is quite typical, like teaching content class with English and then having English teacher to help out a little bit. What kind of practice is that? Ajahn Buah Patuma, are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
please share your
Yes.
experience. That's very typical in Thailand, and I'd like to hear your comment, Dr. Galloway.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, like in Thailand, what I see that the teachers would use more like the CBI or CLIL, CLIL. So, but okay, and then so basically the teachers of the content teachers would need to acquire the skills to be able to teach those subjects in the disciplines, right? While the language teachers would play more roles on the language, play more roles on the language part. However, the language teachers could integrate the content because the English itself, we have the content, but English is a tool for research. English is a tool for communication. So we use that features to help the content teachers. But the problem in Thailand, this is what I think, is that we may not have enough teachers who can teach the content subjects in English. But there are many programs that would like to use EMI. So it's that this is just my view, just that, yeah.
No, and I'm really, really glad that you've just raised 3 points that I'm going to focus on today as well. So who is the EMI teacher as well, and the roles I think are a little blurred between the English teacher and the content teacher. We've got the identity of the teacher as well, that the need to collaborate as well between the two types of teachers, as well as a lack of teachers and a lack of resources. So what we see with this policy is that it's a very top-down endeavour without a ground level needs analysis of do we actually have the resources for this to be a successful and sustainable policy innovation. So no, the 3 points that I'm going to focus on today. So that's a really nice link to the next part of the lecture. Thank you. Challenges then. So yes, thank you. So when you think of the word challenge in relation to EMI, what do you immediately think of? So please use the chat function. It's a very interactive session today, and write the first word, the very first word that comes to your mind. EMI challenge.
Yeah, obstacle, someone said.
Obstacles.
Intelligibility, okay.
Resources. Yes, materials. We'll talk about that today. Language skills of content teachers. So language
proficiency.
Language proficiency. Communication strategies. Anyone else?
Teacher quality, the
The
teaching
training
strategy, yeah,
pedagogy,
yeah, appropriate pedagogies, yeah, likewise.
Good, we're going to talk about that today as well. Now, what does it mean to be a competent EMI teacher? A lot of the focus on EMI content training for teachers has focused on English rather than pedagogy as well. Student backgrounds, yes. Intercultural, lots of challenges. Poor knowledge, students' language proficiency. Excellent, thank you. That's really interesting. Well, let's explore these in more detail then. So if we look at, given the differences in understandings of EMI, the different interpretations of what the goals of EMI are, it's unsurprising that we have different approaches to implementing this policy. A useful model to analyse different approaches would be Macaro's 4 models of language support. He describes the first as the preparatory year model. So students would take a 1-year pre-sessional course and then they would start EMI. The other, this is what I was familiar with in Japan, was the concurrent support. So students will take some EAP or ESP classes alongside their EMI classes. The pre-selection model, so students will take an English test, and based on the score of that test, they'll then enter the EMI program. So this is a selection model. And then there is the ostrich model. If you can imagine the ostrich burying its head in the sand, where students receive no support whatsoever. And the university just buries its head in the sand and pretends that everything is going to be okay, and students will just survive in the EMI context. So despite the very, very high fees, we know in the Thai context that the EMI programs are very expensive. And despite the push and the desire towards EMI, what the research shows is that there's a real lack of support for our students in EMI programs. And this is really concerning given the number of challenges that are being reported in the increased body of EMI research. And I've put the literature review for the British Council here that I edited with colleagues, because we summarise here the challenges from the research. ESAP then, English for Special Academic Purposes, has been noted to be central to EMI. And as David Lasagabaster notes, ideally EMI courses should be underpinned by ESP and EAP courses. But unfortunately, this is not the case in many higher education institutions. So again, just think, we'll use the chat here because I do only have another 35 minutes. Which of Macaro's models are prevalent in your university? The preparatory year, institutional support, pre-institutional selection model, or the ostrich model? Institutional support here, sorry, would be the concurrent model where they have support alongside their EMI classes. I'll go back to the slide so you can see, or the ostrich model. Which of these do you think is common in your context? Preparatory year. That's interesting. Anyone else? The ostrich model, so no support. Okay, we'll come back to that when you have another chance to chat, and also in the questions. Another activity. So if we think then you've already written your challenge to EMI in the chat. I'm going to leave this task for you to think about after, and we can think about it in the Q&A session as well. If you think about the EMI teacher then, so we've said some challenges in general. Some of you did mention the EMI teacher. What about collaboration between EMI content teachers and the English teachers as well? And a colleague mentioned this earlier when she commented on the breakout room summary. Do English teachers and content teachers collaborate in your context to design the curriculum, or even team teaching, for example. So have a little think about this. So what are some challenges then for the EMI teacher? Well, materials, and this was mentioned in the chat. So what we see is that the lack of materials for EMI is a real major challenge. There's a lack of discipline-specific materials for EMI, and we also see criticisms of the irrelevance of foreign curricula as well. We often have these programs transplanted into the Thai context, for example, the materials, the curriculum as well. And there's been a lot of criticism of this. Teachers are often faced with teaching mixed ability classes. So this is often the case in Thailand and Vietnam as well. Quite often, students do not have the academic ability to enter into the Thai medium program, but they can pay the fees for the EMI program, so they're accepted onto the EMI program. So the teacher may be faced with a student with a lower academic ability. They may have the very high proficient English speakers and also those with lower proficiency as well. So we've got a real issue here with entrance requirements as well. And how do we define proficiency and competency as well in English? And this relates to the lectures earlier in the week. What about TESOL pedagogy? We've got to think about the skills required of our teachers. Our EMI content teachers are often Nobel Prize winning professors. I remember talking to, I think maybe King Mong Tut University, a Thai traditional architecture lecturer, and he said, I simply cannot do this. I can't teach the content of my course in English. There's concepts that I need to use Thai for. And he also mentioned that there was an expectation that he should have some TESOL training as well. Yet they had a whole English department in the university that was TESOL trained. So are we expecting too much now of our teachers? This also relates to the English teacher who's expected to have knowledge of the discipline as well. This was also mentioned earlier by yourselves, a lack of qualified and willing local teachers. Many in the research report that they felt obligated. So teachers often find themselves being forced to teach on the EMI programs simply because they obtained their doctorate in an English-speaking country. What about the increased workload as well? Working on an EMI program requires much more than just simply transitioning all your content into English. So there's an increased burden placed on teachers here. What about the content lecturers then? So there's a lot of text here, sorry. As accomplished academics, publishing in their own field, very, very experienced and successful academics, this is a complex matter. And we've seen a lot of focus and criticism on their English proficiency, particularly with reference to native English speaking norms. And I would suggest that we need to move away from this focus on acquiring a native English speaker proficiency in English to focusing on pedagogy and what it means to be a successful EMI teacher. However, we see from the student's perspective in some contexts, students prioritize the content learning over language acquisition in some contexts, and they actually prefer teachers who can effectively teach content regardless of their language skills. This was actually different to my own finding in East and Southeast Asia, where students were enrolling on the programs to improve their English proficiency. So they saw the goal of the EMI program as also improving their English skills. And they didn't like it when their content professors used their mother tongue. The content professors used it as a useful pedagogic tool. The purpose was acquisition of the subject matter, but the students, because they had a different idea of the goals of the program, they saw this as a sign of limited English proficiency. So there's a real issue here between different stakeholders and their understandings. EMI content instructors, it's also been suggested by some that they require training in language pedagogy. So are we now asking really accomplished academics in their fields to now go and study a TESOL Masters? So we're asking people quite a lot. And we've also seen calls for more language-aware teaching practices in teacher training as well. So I'm not suggesting any answers in today's lecture. I'm just trying to problematize all of this. And I'll touch on this again tomorrow with directions for research. So what about the teacher roles then in EMI? You know, are we asking things that's beyond their skill set? Here's a quote from a teacher in my own study. Teaching itself, like anything else, it's a discipline, and it does require training in most cases. And I've already admitted that I've done 9 years of this without any formal training in ESL. I never took a TESOL course, not one. I think for the most part, I would not want a content faculty member trying to teach English. If we have available to us trained, competent professionals. So this content professor here is highlighting that we have an English department within the university that is trained in TESOL and teaching English, and that the roles should perhaps remain separate. What we see then is that EMI content teachers are being asked to teach in English with very few guidelines. Now, a recent study in China by Heath Rose and his colleagues found that some guidelines did exist. They were told to use multimedia teaching, use a lot more in-class discussions and activities, have rich English medium resources, listen to students' feedback, slow down their pace, offer extracurricular tutoring, and edit course-specific English vocabulary. Quite a lot on their workload here, isn't it? And an increased burden. There's also a need for context and discipline-specific training. I'm not going to make this into an activity, but I just want you to think here. If you were to design a training course then for content lecturers in your context, what topics would you cover? What would you call the training program? What would be the aim? The syllabus. So what topics would you cover? And how would you deliver it? Would it be a MOOC? Would it be in person? Because if you're an English teacher in the audience, I imagine that your department is going to be called to do this kind of training quite soon, given the growth rates in EMI. What about the English teachers then? So we've talked about the challenges for the content lecturers, but EMI also presents a lot of challenges for those of us that are English teachers. I was certainly challenged in the Japanese context. Recently, I came across, well, one of my students, my PhD student, came across this job ad in China. We can see here that this is an ad for an English teacher in a Chinese university, but with experience in teaching medical students, music students, science and engineering. So are we going to see then an increased need for TESOL plus science, TESOL plus music, an increased number of job ads asking for TESOL professionals with expertise in a certain area? So Heath and I, in an article in the ELT journal, referred to this as this expanding role now of ELT practitioners with the spread of EMI. Another challenge, there's lots of challenges, is that we often find that the EAP or the ESP courses are often housed in very different departments. They're often structurally and physically distance from the departments that are delivering the content, the EMI courses. This makes collaboration quite difficult as well. We often find that the English departments are quite marginalised as well. And this has been identified as a real barrier for supporting our students on EMI. We do see some work on collaboration and team teaching, but in the emerging, a lot of work definitely exists in Anglophone contexts in the fields of ESP and EAP. But in emerging EMI contexts, research on collaboration is still very much at a stage of infancy. I recently looked at the British Association of Lecturers for EAP, and their website lists a number of teacher training courses. Some of them do refer to EMI contexts, but none of them really are specific to these emerging EMI contexts. What we see then is a real need for a cross-fertilization for EMI researchers and practitioners to also draw on the body of work that we have in the fields of EAP and ESP as well. On the BALIT website, I found one course for teaching EAP, and this university notes that it encourages teachers to think of themselves and their work differently and to position themselves differently within their places of work. It didn't give further details on this, and I haven't done an analysis of these training programs, but it made me wonder that how does this course develop this agency? But it also highlights that there perhaps is a changing role, and the EAP teachers are to think of themselves differently in light of the spread of EMI. We often see in the field of ESP, EAP, a lot's been written on EAP teachers being at the margins of academia. They're seen as a butler or having a Cinderella status, a lower status to the content lecturers. They're just there to assist. And I did find this in Southeast Asia as well, that the English teachers on the EMI programs were also presented with similar extra workload issues, but they had a much lower status in the university and a lower salary. And I would say that with the spread of EMI, we need to ensure that the ELT practitioner has a real central role in informing EMI policy and also program structures as well. And this is something I've started focusing on in recent work. So we need then more collaboration. This lack of collaboration between the two types of teachers is a real challenge. There was an article in the Chinese context that noted that the majority of articles written on EMI were by content lecturers. And I would hope to see more work, more research together with those delivering the content and those teaching English. Sorry, I should have got a glass of water. Team teaching has been found to boost motivation as well. So I think we need to see more work in that area as well. And as Flowerdew points out here, the new role of ESAP teachers is challenging, but it may also lead to them having a more central role, a respected role in the university as well. So I think a key point then to point out here is the need for context-specific needs analysis and context-specific training for both types of teacher. To not devote resources and professional development to ensure students are adequately supported during this unfettered growth in EMI is tantamount to universities setting their own students up to fail. Thus, the integration of the ELT into EMI, particularly in these emerging contexts, is not only research-led good practice, but a moral and ethical responsibility of the universities. But to add here, universities don't just have a responsibility to support students and move away from this ostrich model, but also to support staff as well. So there's numerous implications for professional development. But there's also a need to guide strategic plans and policy, and a need for more roadmaps and policy implementation toolkits, which we'll talk more about tomorrow. So just to finish then, and we've got plenty of time for questions, I wanted to present here again the network that I've mentioned the last 2 days. So what I've managed to do is the website will be live in tomorrow's presentation. I met with the developers yesterday, but for now you can join the network here. You can use this QR code. And we hope that this network will be an online platform to facilitate this collaboration. I set up this network. It has taken 4 or 5 years. The East Asia study was conducted in 2017. And one of the main outcomes of that study was the need for a community of practice of researchers and practitioners, for content practitioners and for ELT practitioners to be able to share resources, to share good practice. And we hope that the network will offer a platform. So we have a professional development section, a resource section. We've got lots of interviews, podcasts, videos, meet the teachers, meet the teacher educators. You can share your data collection tools. You can put out calls for collaboration. And we hope that it will really foster joint co-curriculum construction between English teachers and also content teachers as well. So please do sign up if you're interested. And we also have the conference in mid-April as well. And as I mentioned, we have an LANet Thailand branch as well. And we'll be doing some work with our Thai colleagues going forward. So thank you very much for listening. We probably do have time to go back and do some of the activities, but I'll open up for questions first. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Galloway. So I think we all have heard and we have been through the activity. Some of the activities, it might be new to you that you have to put into the breakout rooms, and some of you might found out that you need some more times. That's very nice and lively session actually. So far that right now I think after we have been listening to the speaker, so I do strongly believe that some of you might have questions to ask and to address. All of you are welcome. You can ask the speaker yourself by unmute yourself, and some of you might love to type on the chat box. Both ways are welcome. Yes, please. The floor is yours. All the participants, it's your turn now. Your chance is here. Grab it or lose it, please.
I can open the breakout rooms again and see if there's any questions.
Wow. That's interesting. If you love to, Prof.
Maybe what we can do is go back to the activity, because I did, that's why we finished a little quick, because I skipped over a couple of, let me just, why don't we do this activity here?
Yeah, it's attempting. Prof, we need to take that photo first, and then how long do we have to be in the breakout room this time?
So maybe about 7 minutes.
All right, 7 minutes, everyone. So let's take photo and be in the breakout room then.
And I'm going to move people to different rooms. Okay. So anyone that was alone, I've put them in another room. Okay, we should have everybody. Some people have not joined, but look, someone's
Okay.
alone in room
Yeah, it
2.
seems only one person in room 2. And only one person. Okay, now room 8 is fine.
I'm surprised I was 15 minutes early finishing. I thought that I had timed it to be 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I spoke too quickly, maybe.
No, it's fine.
I was worried you could hear my dog snoring. Yeah, the groups look okay. I was keeping my eye on the groups. It's hard to know how long to give them. I think maybe bring them back.
It's fine. I guess yeah, you can bring them back. And then we can rest some time for Q&A. And again, they ask them to, to summarize what they have, discussed in the groups.
So, you come back, Professor.
Welcome back.
Actually, I have one question to ask you. Yeah, I'm not sure that my internet connection is stable or not. Sometimes it's lagging. I'm Wood, I'm a lecturer in the university in Bangkok. Before I moved here, I teach in one university that they claim that, they use the EMI, to incorporate to their program for the whole program in the university. And then but I quit already from the previous workplace, right? And then so I moved here, work in the university in Bangkok, and they put the word like international program in the blanket, right, at the end of the name of the program. But of course, we are required to use English as a medium of instruction for the whole program, right? But I just talking about the concept of the fairness in terms of like the incentive or the salary and the teachers get, from the previous workplace when they use like bilingual program or EMI like that. It seems like the teacher get less salary or less incentive, but it's kind of like when I moved to another college, another university, and they put the word at the end of the program, like, okay, they say like international program. So that means like we use English to teach, entire program for 4 years program. It seems like, oh, the word international program, it's, oh, yeah, they provide a lot of the money and the salary, or even like when we teaching extra courses, right? And we get extra money by the lecture hour. It's kind of like, it's quite, totally different compared to the EMI or the bilingual program like that. It's kind of like, yeah, but I think it's kind of like, some of my friends share with me like, oh, you are good, like you moved to another university, but your program used the word like international program at the end of your degree like that. So that means like you get the more incentive salary. But for us, like we use EMI and bilingual like that, we get a little. But in reality, they are required to use English to teach like almost 100%. It's similar to, yeah, it's about the policy thing, something, yeah.
Yeah, that seems strange. So really the policy, the programs are the same. They're similar. It's just the wording then.
Yeah, that is kind of like based on my observation, because I feel like, yeah, it's the program is the same, but it's just kind of like the program developer or the university put the word like whether it is international program or bilingual program or EMI like that. It's just different word like that. Different incentive, different salary, in terms of the teacher, like the benefit that we get. Yeah.
But the actual curriculum is very similar, and the work is similar.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds very problematic.
Yes. Yeah. I just would like to share with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me that you should add international then. That's...
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to share any of their?
By the way, regarding the when we're talking about EMI, it can be clearly seen that one of the main challenging is about the language proficiency of the learners. I mean, their language background, for example, because the classrooms are very diverse. Some are having very low language proficiency, and some having very high language proficiency. So in the case of this, I mean, if in one particular classroom, the students are divided into 2 groups. First, some of them are very high language proficiency, and some of them are very low language proficiency. Of course, those who have high language proficiency, they may seem okay. It's fine for us to use English as a medium of instruction, and comparing to those who have a very low language proficiency. Oh, teacher, we don't want it. It's very difficult for us to understand if you use 100% English in the classroom. So under these circumstances, do you have any suggestion, how teacher, will be able to tackle with these particular, issues, if this two group of students prefer something, completely different?
Yeah, I think that it goes down to, so this activity, thinking about the topics to be covered, that I think that EMI teaching mixed ability students is probably something that needs to be on a training program as well. And mixed ability wouldn't just refer to English proficiency as well. I think that we need to equip teachers with needs analysis skills as well. And yeah, to really why are their students in the program, and what are their main goals? What do they see as the purposes of EMI as well? But I think really they're teaching very diverse groups of students, some with international students, some with more monolingual groups as well. So it's really challenging.
Yeah. So normally what I have done in my class during my first class, when I first met my students, so normally I have to do some kind of analysis the language proficiency of my students first, to see how their language proficiency level look like. And sometimes, mostly I normally start like a 50% utilize English in the classroom, and after 50% maybe their own language, like their mother tongue, for example. And maybe 1 or 2 weeks, or maybe 1 or 2 months later, I increase more, like a 70% using English, or 80% using English in the classroom, and then 20% only some Thai language, for example. Just holding to I just don't want to decrease their motivation of learning, and later when those group of students who have a very low language proficiency feel somehow very familiar with the utilizing English language in the classroom, so in that case it's going to be like a 100% English later on after that. So maybe at the beginning it's maybe difficult, but later once the student feel familiar with the using English in the classroom, maybe this can be one of the main activities or strategy that we can employ in our classroom. By the way, I have another question actually. I have heard that some scholars mention that English is a killer language. So I would like to know your opinions or your own perspective based on your expertise and based on your experience. What is your opinion on the claim made by some scholars that English is a killer language, especially in the context where English is used as the primary language for instruction, such as EMI? And how do you think the dominance of English at a young age and the poor exposure to mother tongues or local languages may impact the development and retention of a student's mother tongue or local languages?
Yeah, I think that with EMI, we are seeing a resurgence of linguistic imperialism as well, and the westernization of higher education, the Englishization of higher education. We've been talking a lot here about exposure to English, this English-only ideology, the learn English through English. But as we know today, multilingualism, not monolingualism, is the norm. And outside of that context, our students are using English as a lingua franca in very multilingual contexts where they make use of their entire linguistic repertoire. So really, I think we do need to examine the E in EMI as well, in our language policy, in our language use, and also focus on translanguaging in teacher training programs as well, and the valuable use of translanguaging pedagogy as well, as opposed to this English only ideology. And I think it's also problematic as we see an increased call for native English speakers for EMI context. So perhaps it's quite concerning that we have really established academics perhaps being replaced by a young American science graduate, for example, who has an inferior knowledge of the topic, but is a so-called legitimate speaker of English and therefore a credible teacher. I'm not sure, did that answer your question, Yusuf?
Yeah. So what you have just mentioned, it seems like the concept of the EMI and the concept of the translanguaging is somehow contradict to one another, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot's been written recently, and I'll talk about this tomorrow as well, having a global Englishes perspective in EMI as well, and really a critical perspective on the role of English in higher education. I mean, yes, English is the world's language, and the majority of academic outputs are in English, but it's a real concern that we're replacing some valuable work that's done in other languages as well with English outputs.
So thank you.
And it relates to more than just English. I mean, it's academic norms as well, isn't it? Essay writing styles, genres, and adopting Western curricula as well.
So it seems there is a question in the chat box from
Mishai.
Yeah.
Would you like to? Yeah.
Okay. When an English course is taught through English, is this considered EMI? That's the first question. And the second question, when a content course is taught through with a pure focus on transmitting content knowledge without any concern about ELT or TESOL elements?
Sorry, I forgot the word English there in the second question. When a content when a content course is taught through English, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Sorry for the typo there. Yes, thank you very much indeed, Ajahn Yusuf, for allowing me to ask a question. I mean, a few questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that your question raises this issue that there's no clear-cut definition of EMI, and conceptualizations of what it means vary amongst stakeholders. So one of the common definitions would be Ernesto Macaro's definition that it's the use of English to teach subject matter in countries where the majority of the population do not speak English. So when an English course is taught through English, I would consider that more CBLT, or an ELT course. Actually, if it's an English course taught in English, that's ELT, English language teaching. A content course taught with a pure focus on content without any, for some, yes, that would be EMI. Others may have a more dual focus, a more CLIL approach, but they still label it as EMI. So I think people are using the term in very different ways. And I think this relates to we have no clear policy implementation guidelines, or clear institutional guidelines or curriculum guidelines either, where the goal of the program is stated. So a lot of the universities that I visited did not have a clear EMI curriculum with the goals and the learning outcomes. There was no definition of EMI or international program.
Maybe,
thank you very much indeed.
Maybe Ajahn Mishai, we can do some kinds of conducting a research regarding how do Thai educational stakeholders like students, teachers, or policymakers, or curriculum designer, how do they understand the concept of EMI? How do they define EMI, and what factors in affecting their belief behind EMI? Maybe.
Thank you very much, my dear Associate Professor Dr. Yusuf. Thank you.
Professor, I have one question. Can I? Yes. At my university, we have two courses. It's similar because it is just as my own feeling. Actually, I'm a language teacher, right? So I'm teaching English for news writing. And also another course is called Introduction to Journalism, right? It's for the communication teacher. When I teach, the English for news writing, so I kind of design the course syllabus. I add, some kind of, the concept of journalism and also news values. And it's kind of like a, some concept or overlapping idea with the introduction to journalism course, right? But for the second half, I teach a student, how they apply those kind of concepts to write the news, right? The news article or even like new feature article as well. But when I compare my course syllabus, English for news writing and the course syllabus from the mass communication teacher, it is named Introduction to journalism is similar, totally similar. And then and I now I get confused whether my course is ESP or CLIUS or EMI like that. It's very confused, because like the course syllabus is totally the same or similar to the course like Introduction to Journalism. Yeah.
Yeah, or ESAP as well, so English for specific academic purposes. So it seems to me we have a genre-based approach there. So I am also thinking about the terms and the definitions at the moment. I noticed in a recent article, I used the term EAP a lot, but actually, I think some of the teachers were ESP or ESAP as well. So this relates to my point about EMI researchers and teachers as well, working more closely with scholars in the field of ESP and EAP, because there's a huge body of scholarship there that we can learn from. So the studies have been done in Anglophone contexts, and we can certainly learn a lot from the studies in Anglophone context, but we do have to bear in mind that these emerging EMI contexts are unique and different, particularly with their links to language learning goals. But I think that EMI researchers do need to draw on EAP and ESP scholarship in more detail. And yes, there's a number of terms: CLIL, CBLT, CBI, ESP, ESAP. And I think I should say, some of us are unsure really how the course that we're teaching would be defined as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So that means like these three terms like EAP or ESP or CLIL is kind of share something in common, right? They have like overlapping idea, something, right?
And ESAP, English for specific academic purposes.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, because I kind of like surprise my course syllabus, right? English for news writing, and compare with Introduction to Journalism for the communication professor, and then you decide the course syllabus like totally similar or the same to my, the communication professor said that. I said, yeah, because like when I have to teach the student to write the news article, I have to add, some concept about news values and the concept of journalism. They should know like for the first half of the course, and after that in the second half it's kind of like a practice, right? Practical part, and then they have a chance to write the news, right? That no, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I think it would be helpful for you to have a look at Ursula Wingate's work on genre-based approaches. And we actually recently had a debate in the ELT journal. So Heath and I wrote an article on the expanding role of the ELT practitioner. Ursula and Angela Hakim wrote a response to that, and we had a little debate, and we've turned the debate into a fruitful collaboration. We're going to be presenting together, but Ursula's in the field of EAP and has written extensively on this. So I think if you have a look at her work, that would be really helpful there.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes, Ajahn Michai, please.
Thank you very much again, Ajahn Yusuf. All right. I'm sorry to ask again. In fact, I should let other people have their say, but I'm following up is a follow-up question of my previous question, and it's somehow related to the things our previous colleague have expressed, have discussed. So are you suggesting that basically the EAP, ESP, ESAP courses, basically they are not what truly EMI? Of course, there are some things in common. They are overlapping, but can they also be? Because there are what the main. I'm not sure if the main focus, but the focus is still on English. So it's the EAP, ESP is English for something. So there is like, there are like we can see clearly that the teacher should be focusing on English for a particular content subject areas, whereas for the EMI. I don't know, but because in the breakout rooms, from some of my colleagues who happen to have a direct experience with handling an EMI course in Thailand context, And when it comes to EMI, English, I mean, what the TESOL pedagogy, the ELT elements was not considered anymore. They just teach the contents just using English. That is what is understood in her context. So that's why I have this question. So if like the ESP course or EAP course is taught in English, is that considered some like weak or like light form of EMI, whereas the EMI, which for full focus on the content, is like a full form or strong form of EMI, so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think your your question and your reflection there, I think, just demonstrates how confused people are, and we've got a real lack of policy guidelines and curriculum guidelines and definitions. My understanding, and this is only my understanding, is that your ESP course would not be EMI, because if I go by Macaro's definition of EMI, it's the teaching of the content, but your ESP course is part of the EMI curriculum, but the language and academic support. But your focus, you are an English teacher, your focus is still on the English aspect. But in order for the students to support the students to learn the content, that's my understanding. So you would be part of the EMI curriculum, but the language and academic support aspect. The EMI program is about the delivery of the content through the medium of English. Whether the EMI content lecturer also has responsibility for helping students with their language, that's another matter. And I think that's a challenge that we see as emerging as well, that again, it's these blurred roles between the English teacher and the content teacher.
All right, thank you very much. We have such fruitful and very debatable topics, and I believe that this should program manager need to extend some more times for the sessions like this, okay? Because it's very electrifying and very controversial issues indeed, you see, because we can keep on, you know, discuss and debate, and there are certain questions pop up on and on. Without ado, let's come back. We nearly run out of time, and I, on behalf of the program, very appreciate for everyone attending today's session, and we value your feedback. Okay, so that's why we would like to invite you to participate in a short survey about the content, the current experience toward this session. So right now you can click on the evaluation link in the chat box that provided by our project manager. So I will leave this matter about 2 minutes so you can complete the survey. So please spend time on this. So the evaluation link has been posted to all of you. So we will leave you about 2 minutes on this part. All right. I believe that all of you might complete the survey. Thank you for that. So right now, as always, we are going to provide you the e-certificate to all of you, all participants that has
Maybe
been attended. Yes.
Yeah, maybe the next event first, I guess.
All right, sure. All right. Before we are going to provide you the e-certificate link, why don't we go back and look up for the tomorrow event? Okay, so right now, allow me to, oops. Prof, would you mind to stop sharing the screen first? I would like to, Prof. Galloway, I would love to share the screen for tomorrow's session. Would you mind to stop sharing? Yeah, the screen. Thank you very much. Okay, so right now, allow me to share with you all the screen for tomorrow's session. Here it is. All right. As you can clearly see on the screen, tomorrow we are going to meet our lovely Prof again. Okay, on the topic researching English medium instruction. So it's going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thailand time. So all of you are welcome. And those of you who are not registered yet, please welcome to register now by scan the QR code as you can see on the screen. And at the same time, our program manager, do you have any link for
Yeah, I posted already. I posted.
All right. Oh, you can press, okay, the application form link right away. And voila, if you have been through the link and get to the link, hopefully to see you, all of you tomorrow's session. Yeah. Okay, that's all for the tomorrow program. And right now, the moment that all of us are waiting for the e-certificate, all right? Because some of us, eagerly, oh, there will be the same link or separate ones. So in order to give you the answer, yes, right now, Ajahn Yusuf is going to give you all the e-certificate link after you have completed. You will get the certificate right away according to your email that you provide on the form, all right? So make sure if happen to be you have any difficulties dealing accessing to these two forms, either evaluation forms or e-certificate, please directly contact me or project manager, Dr. Yusuf, in private chat box or our emails. Okay, welcome on that. So I do believe that we have reached the end of our today's session. I would like to say thank you very much. We are really appreciate for your attending today and stay tuned till the end of the session for today. And on the behalf of the program, I would like to say thank you again to Prof. Nicola Galloway and all of you, all the participants from both Thailand and overseas. Okay, right now it's time to say goodbye and Assalamu alaikum. Have a good day, everyone. And to Prof, have a great morning and enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola Galloway, and hope to see you again tomorrow as your last session.
Good morning.
Make sure you drink plenty of water because today I can see that, you start coughing and all that stuff in certain period.
Yeah, I think I'll bring some water. I was, talking a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Warm water will.
Nicholas.
Pardon?
No, just have a great day to everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Tomorrow, guys.
See you. Bye bye.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.